In my hands I hold a bouquet of roses, freshly cut this morning. The dewdrops still cling to the elegant pink petals with their reddish hue. In the calm before opening, I move among the flowers, carefully arranging each stem. A small wind chime sways, letting in a fresh breeze. "Mommy, we're running out of water lilies," Yam says softly from behind. My 8-year-old daughter always helps me at the shop when she has days off. It's Saturday. James, my husband, left for work early, but his expression was more severe than usual. He didn't come home until late again last night. "Thanks, Lily. Mommy will restock later," I say, gently stroking her head. Lily nods silently and returns to tending the flowers. She doesn't smile anymore when she's in front of her father. She just lowers her head. The tension is reflected in her face. Margaret, my mother-in-law, appears from the back of the shop. 65, she lives with us. "Amy, the deliveries are ready," she says kindly, but her eyes hide something somber. We live in a luxurious area of suburban Boston. At first glance, we lack nothing. My husband earns over $500,000 a year as an executive at a major investment bank. Some weekends we spend at our vacation home in Cape Cod. But lately, the atmosphere at home has become heavy. "Do you think you'll go to church tomorrow?" Margaret asks. Sunday service at the Episcopal Church used to be part of our family routine, but James's words echo in my mind. I don't associate with good people anymore. "We'll see how I feel," I respond evasively. Lily leans on my shoulder. Sunlight streams into the shop, illuminating the flowers with its brilliance, but shadows have fallen over our hearts. My husband has started to explode over insignificant things, and has become strangely obsessed with every move the family makes. He stays out late more and more often, and when he returns he doesn't speak to anyone. "Amy, those men are back." Margaret's voice trembles. Men in black suits walk in front of the shop. We had seen them yesterday and the day before. I stand protectively in front of my daughter. Lily's small hands grip my clothes tightly. Inside our flower shop, the air is filled with floral fragrances. We hold our breath, hoping those shadows will disappear. My small flower shop, located along the Charles River, has a good reputation in the area. We specialize in arrangements for churches and funerals, as well as wedding flowers. It's not a huge business, but we've built a loyal clientele. However, lately those peaceful days have been threatened. "Mommy," Lily looks at me with worried eyes. "I'm afraid of Daddy." Her words squeeze my heart. Indeed, my husband has changed. There's no trace left of the kind man he once was. Although his job at the investment bank should be going well, his eyes seem tormented by something. He can't calm down. Margaret has suffered watching her son's transformation. She fears him too. Sometimes she finds him desperately searching the safe late at night. The suspicious phone calls have become more frequent. Every day, I take my daughter to her expensive private school. On the way, I strive to maintain a flawless image in this neighborhood of wealthy families concerned with their status. Rumors fly like wildfire, so I cling to the facade of normalcy. Shopping at Whole Foods, meetings with friends, PTA gatherings. On the surface, nothing has changed, but inside, our hearts are slowly crumbling. The wind chime rings again. This time, it's a regular customer. I force myself to smile and hand him a bouquet. The scent of the flowers and the warmth of my daughter are the only things keeping my heart going. That night, the ringing of the phone breaks the silence. I stiffen. Lately, late-night calls don't bring good news. I had fallen asleep on the sofa waiting for my husband to return, my heart in my throat. I pick up the receiver. "Mrs. Amy Wilson?" The voice on the other end is firm. "This is Detective Johnson from the Boston Police Department. I'm sorry to inform you that your husband has been in a car accident." My hand holding the phone begins to tremble. The officer continues. "He's being transported to Massachusetts General Hospital. It was a single-vehicle accident on Charles Street. His state of consciousness is..." The rest of his words become blurry, distant in my mind. I see my husband's severe expression when he left the house this morning. "We'll give you more details at the hospital. Please come as soon as possible." I rush upstairs, careful not to make noise on the hallway carpet. I cautiously open Lily's door. In the dim light, my daughter is already awake, as if she had sensed something. She's sitting on her bed, hugging her knees. "Daddy's been taken to the hospital, Lily. Let's go together." She nods silently and gets up quickly. There's an unnatural calm in her movements, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Downstairs, Margaret waits anxiously. She must have woken up from the noise. She's wearing a thin robe and her face is pale. "Mom, please take care of the house." "Yes. Be careful." Her voice is soft but firm. "Amy, whatever happens, stay strong." There's something more in her tone, a hidden meaning I can't decipher. Her eyes reflect a determination I've never seen before. The car moves through the deserted streets of early morning. The flashes of streetlights illuminate the windows as we pass. Lily, in the passenger seat, remains silent. I notice she anxiously watches the rearview mirror every time we stop at traffic lights. The emergency room at Massachusetts General Hospital is chaos. Doctors and nurses in white coats rush around. Ambulance sirens wail in the distance. We follow a nurse through the corridors, impregnated with the strong smell of disinfectant. "Are you the Wilson family?" a young doctor asks as he approaches us. Although he looks exhausted, there's tension in his expression. He's currently unconscious and in critical condition. He suffered severe head trauma and could have internal injuries. We're preparing for emergency surgery. As I listen to the doctor's explanation, I squeeze my daughter's hand tightly. I feel the tips of her fingers trembling slightly. We wait in the long corridor under the cold, artificial light of the fluorescents. Lily doesn't let go of my hand. Her skin is normally cool. On the wall, a red lamp glows silently, indicating that surgery is in progress. The hands of the clock move with exasperating slowness. During all this time, Lily doesn't try to let go of my hand, as if afraid of separating from me. Before dawn, the surgery finally ends. We managed to save his life, but he hasn't regained consciousness yet, the doctor informs us. There were multiple fractures and internal injuries, but fortunately nothing fatal. We'll keep him in the ICU for observation for now. As I listen to the doctor's explanation, I feel Lily's grip on my hand tighten. At that moment, I notice something strange in my daughter's expression. It's not relief, it's something else. In the ICU room, the only sound is the constant beep of the life support equipment. The green line on the monitor moves rhythmically, a silent witness to my husband's life. He lies in the bed surrounded by tubes and wires. His expression, which normally seemed intimidating, has completely disappeared. Now he just seems to be asleep, pale. The bandages on his head and the medical equipment attached to his body make it clear how serious the accident was. Suddenly, Lily's body begins to tremble. I look at her in surprise. Large tears overflow from her eyes. Are they tears of fear or something else? In a trembling voice, Lily leans close and whispers in my ear, "Mommy, we have to run. Once Daddy wakes up, it will be too late." A chill runs down my spine. In my daughter's eyes, I see a fear I've never witnessed before, as if something she had been holding back for a long time had suddenly exploded. Those aren't the eyes of a little girl. In them there is a heavy truth, one that cannot be expressed with words. I can't hide my surprise. Suddenly, the scene before me seems different. My husband's accident, the silence in the hospital room, and above all, the abnormal fear in my daughter's eyes, all point to something more, something I still don't understand. Outside the window, dawn begins to color the sky with golden and pink hues. "Lily," I begin to speak, but at that instant, footsteps are heard in the nurse's station. Lily clings to me quickly as if trying to hide. Her small body continues to tremble. It's an instinctive gesture, almost as if she were already used to doing it. Visiting hours are over. The nurse's soft voice brings me back to reality. "Thank you. We're leaving now." As we leave the room, I take one last look at my husband surrounded by wires and life support equipment. He seems like another person. When did the gentle husband I once knew become someone so terrifying? My daughter's words keep echoing in my mind. "Mommy, we have to. Once Daddy wakes up, it will be too late." The weight of those words slowly sinks into my heart. Our footsteps echo in the silent ICU corridor. Lily's hand is still clinging tightly to mine. The hospital waiting room is cold and silent, as if shrouded in the morning mist. Under the dim light, the plastic chairs lined up in sterile rows seem even more lonely. A faint smell of disinfectant lingers in the air. Hours have passed since the accident. My body screams for exhaustion, but my mind is caught in a strange tension. as if something doesn't quite fit. Lily curls up beside me. Even as dawn begins to illuminate the city, her trembling doesn't completely cease. Wrapped in a thin blanket, she looks like a wounded little bird. We decided to wait here until Margaret arrives. Lily, can you tell me? I ask gently. Maybe now she can talk about the changes of these last few months. My daughter lifts her face slightly. Her gaze scans the area cautiously, as if checking that no one else could hear. That gesture is not that of a child her age. It's a learned instinctive vigilance. The waiting room is still empty at this hour. The hospital is still shrouded in an unsettling silence. Daddy. Her voice trembles slightly. He was afraid we would run away. My heart beats hard at those words. In my daughter's eyes, I see something I had never noticed before. It's not just fear, it's determination. He watched us every day, she whispers. He said if we told anyone about the money, the whole family would disappear. My breath catches. Lily's confession hits me like a blow to the chest. It's as if the darkness that had been contained for so long had suddenly exploded. What did he see? The sleepless nights, her father's strange behavior, the suspicious outings in the early morning. Daddy's computer was always full of weird things, codes, numbers. Lily's voice is reduced to a whisper, but little by little, I began to understand its meaning. Too much for a girl of only 8 years old. What kind of burden has she been carrying all this time? My heart feels crushed by the weight of her secret. Just then, the waiting room door opens and Margaret enters. Her face is pale, with the expression of someone who has made an irreversible decision. She carries an old leather bag in her hands. Amy, I need to tell you something too. Her voice sounds heavy, as if each word costs her effort. Margaret says she noticed the changes in her son about 6 months ago. His desperate searching in the safe late at night, the increasingly frequent phone calls, his way of behaving as if someone were following him. At first I thought it was work stress. Her voice trembles. But then something happened. She pauses, taking a deep breath before continuing. A month ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and froze when I heard my son's shouts from his study. Margaret opens the old leather bag and pulls out a photograph. I took it secretly. She hands it to me with trembling hands. The picture shows documents scattered on her son's desk, a computer screen illuminated with endless rows of numbers. Something in Margaret's expression makes my skin crawl. He told me, "Don't tell anyone if you value your life." From that night on, everything changed. The security cameras in the house increased. Family outings became strictly controlled. All bank accounts were under his command. Margaret had witnessed firsthand her son's descent into madness. The numbers on the computer. I understood them too, she whispers. They were the amounts of assets taken, and of people who disappeared. My blood runs cold. But Margaret isn't finished. That's not all, Lily says softly. Her tone carries the fear of someone who has kept a secret too big for too long. Mommy, I saw something. My daughter's words pierce my chest. In a broken voice, she begins to tell me about that night. A night when my husband's business partners came to the house. Lily heard men shouting in the study, the sound of things breaking. Fearful, she peeked out, hidden in the darkness of the hallway. She saw it all. They've silenced them, my daughter murmurs. Then she heard her father's voice. The evidence. Another man's voice responded. Everything has been taken care of. The shadows on the wall formed sinister figures. It was at that moment that Lily heard the words that have haunted her ever since. We don't forgive witnesses. It was her father's cold voice, as if he were a completely different person. After that, Lily's voice trembles. I saw something on Daddy's computer screen. An image was displayed on the screen. It was a photo of an elderly couple. Next to it, in red letters, the word handled. Below, a series of enormous numbers. Those people disappeared, they were on the news. Margaret holds her breath. A shiver runs down my spine. In my mind, scattered memories begin to connect like pieces of a puzzle. My husband's behavior started to change after that big investment deal. Elderly couples who promised huge profits and then disappeared without a trace. Small articles in the newspaper about missing persons cases. And now this photo. Margaret pulls out another picture with trembling hands. My son was hiding it. In the photograph, several elderly couples are seen smiling at the camera, all of them people who had recently disappeared. Margaret takes my hand. Amy, we can't stay silent anymore. We can't keep pretending this isn't happening. At that moment, footsteps echo in the hallway. Lily stiffens. Margaret quickly hides the photos in her bag. A nurse approaches. You have visitors. They say they want to see you. Outside the waiting room, a man in a black suit waits. He says he's a business partner of my husband. His gaze shines with coldness. The tall man's shadow stretches sinisterly down the hallway, distorted under the dim hospital light. Ma'am, I'm so sorry for what happened. Your husband and I are close colleagues. His voice is polite but empty. I feel Lily clinging to my clothes tightly. The color drains from Margaret's face. The man continues with a cold smile. Actually, there are some important company documents I'd like to discuss with you. Everything becomes clear at once. My husband's abnormal behavior, the investment fraud, the missing persons. We had just discovered a truth we should never have known. My husband wasn't just a con man. He was involved in something much darker. I swallow hard. I'm sorry, I respond in a firm voice. But right now, I just want to be with my family. For an instant, the man gives me an icy stare. But finally he smiles coldly and turns around. As he walks away, I have the horrible feeling that there's something sinister about his back. In the waiting room, no one says a word for a long time. The morning light begins to filter through the hospital windows. And then I decide. I can't continue exposing Lily and Margaret to danger. I've thought again and again about all the possibilities, but there's only one conclusion. I look at Margaret and my daughter. Lily. Margaret, let's go. Let's live together. The moment I say those words, I feel something heavy inside me lighten, even if only a little. A faint expression of relief appears on their faces, but I know this is just the beginning. My husband's organization was powerful, and a single false step could be irreversible. After leaving the hospital, our first stop was a small law office on the other side of town, across the Charles River. We entered through an alleyway, past old, worn storefronts, until we reached an old brick building that seemed to hide in the shadow of the skyscrapers. My husband's partners shouldn't be able to. The lawyer I spoke with on the phone to explain the situation was already waiting for us. You've been through a lot, she said softly. First, let's ensure your safety. In the reception room, decorated in an antique style, we began to explain everything in detail. The photos Margaret had collected, the conversations Lily remembered, the multiple suspicious incidents. Lily spoke with a trembling voice at times, but her memory was precise and her composure surprising for an 8-year-old. Jane listened attentively, her expression becoming increasingly serious. This is clearly coercion, she said, closing the folder firmly. And there's enough evidence to prove investment fraud. But then she paused, seemingly choosing her words carefully. The light coming through the window cast deeper shadows on her face. There's also the possibility of more serious crimes. The disappearances should be under police investigation. Actually, there's already movement, she added in an enigmatic tone. We spent more than 2 hours planning our next steps. First, getting new identity documents, considering applying for the Witness Protection Program, opening bank accounts outside of my husband's reach. Lily's transfer to another school also had to be handled carefully. I know a principal at a small private school in Minden. She'll understand the situation. But then I remembered something even more worrying: the money. All income is. Margaret, who had been silent, looked up and spoke softly. It's okay. She reached into her bag and pulled out a bank book. I have my retirement savings in a separate account. My son doesn't know about this. Her hands trembled slightly as she extended the bank book. This should be sufficient for a while. At that moment, Jane's cell phone rang. She answered, and immediately her expression changed. The air in the room instantly tensed. The Crawfords are going to testify. Margaret and I exchanged glances. Upon hearing that name, the Crawfords were one of the elderly couples believed to be missing. They were my husband's first big investors. We thought they had been disposed of. They were placed under police protection 2 weeks ago, Jane continued. Apparently, they were being held at a facility in the Montana mountains. Now they're ready to testify about your husband's involvement. The atmosphere in the room tensed instantly. Only the hum of an old fan broke the silence. But that means... Margaret's voice trembled. My son's partners. Yes, Jane nodded seriously. Things are going to change. Their testimony will accelerate the investigation. Most likely the FBI will get involved. But at the same time the danger will increase, she whispered. Lily was right. The appearance of the Crawfords was a double-edged sword. While the investigation progressed, my husband's organization would also react. They would do whatever it took to prevent more witnesses from emerging. It was a race against time. Jane got up from her seat. We must hurry with the preparations. I have a friend who works at a hotline for victims of domestic violence. We can ask for her cooperation. That same afternoon, we decided to separate to cover more ground. Margaret would go to the bank to transfer funds and open new accounts. I would look for a safe place to stay and contact a real estate agent in Kennebunkport. Lily would discuss her school transfer with a trusted teacher. We looked at each other before leaving. Be careful, we said to each other. Moving around the city separately was dangerous, but we had no choice. At night my cell phone rang. It was the hospital. Ma'am, your husband's condition has stabilized. It's possible he'll regain consciousness tomorrow. My breath caught. We had no time. We had to finish all the preparations before he woke up. Driving through the city at night, I tried to organize my... In a matter of hours, terrifying truths had been revealed one after another. Jane's investigation had uncovered unimaginable horror. The victims were more than 100 people who had lost all their retirement savings, elderly people robbed of their pensions with false investment promises. Then came the threats, forced confinement, and the elimination of evidence. Just thinking about it made me shudder. There were still missing people. Jane's words kept echoing in my head. When I returned to the hospital, visiting hours were almost over. And then I saw them. Those men in black suits were in the hallway again. When they saw me, they smiled with an unsettling coldness. My heart pounded as I walked towards the intensive care unit. I saw my husband one last time surrounded by tubes. His condition was stable, and they said he would soon regain consciousness. The sleeping face of the man I once loved now seemed like a stranger. Let's go, Lily said from behind. When I turned around, my daughter was looking at me with steady eyes. That fearful expression was gone, and her eyes now shone with determination for a new future. I nodded. We won't be back. When we left the hospital, the full moon shone in the sky. In the car, heading to the hotel where Margaret was waiting for us, Lily showed a sleeping, peaceful face for the first time in a long time. The moonlight through the car window gently illuminated her cheek. With the dawn of the next day, we began a new life. A new flower shop in a small coastal town in Maine. There we would regain our peaceful days. A life surrounded by the sound of the waves and the fragrance of flowers. I gripped the steering wheel with determination. Under the moonlight, the car continued north. Behind us was our past, and ahead, although uncertain, stretched a future full of hope. A year has passed since then. My new flower shop is located on a small street in Kennebunkport. It's a modest shop with white walls and a blue door. The name Lily's Flowers was my daughter's idea. In the morning mist, I water the potted plants in front of the shop. The sound of the waves mixes with the sea breeze. Mommy, I'm ready. Lily calls from inside the shop. My daughter, now 9 years old, has completely regained her sparkle. She has made many friends at her new school. On weekends, she invites her friends over to bake cookies together. Every time I see her smile, I'm convinced we made the right decision. Amy, today's deliveries are ready. Margaret appears with bouquets in her hands. She's also having peaceful days. She participates in local volunteer activities and is active in the church reading group. Sometimes she gets lost in her thoughts about her son, but that's becoming less frequent. Our new life is gradually taking shape. The shop is much loved by the community and popular with tourists. Our flowers add color to Main Street, surrounded by antique shops. However, the past hasn't completely disappeared. So sometimes the topic appears on the television news, with headlines that read, "Major investment fraud case, new developments." As the full scope of the case came to light, its scale surpassed imagination. The victims numbered over 100, with total damages reaching tens of millions of dollars. Elderly people who lost their retirement funds, families robbed of their dreams, and those who never returned. My husband, well now ex-husband, was arrested shortly after regaining consciousness. The FBI investigation led to his indictment as the mastermind of the investment fraud and a suspect in multiple attempted murders. At the trial, the witnesses appeared one after another, starting with the Crawfords. The survivors came forward, and Margaret and I testified bravely. In addition to submitting a written testimony, Lily was exempted from testifying because she had already started a new life in a safe place. The sentence was 25 years in prison. He will spend most of his life behind bars. Other members of the organization were also arrested, one after another. The men in black suits appeared on the news handcuffed. Every time I saw them, a chill ran down my spine. Their evil hands had almost reached us. The newspapers and television reported on this case as the investment fraud of the century, targeting the elderly. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind it hid a much more horrible story. Threats, assaults, and the elimination of evidence. The prosecutor's words still echo in my ears. But now a new morning begins. Children pass by the shop on their way to school. Lily also walks to school, chatting cheerfully with her new friends. We've made plans to go to the beach together this weekend, she says, smiling. Margaret has started volunteering at a local senior center. She also participates quietly in support activities for victims of investment fraud. Her kindness is slowly healing wounded hearts. I participate in activities with the Association of Victims' Families. At our monthly meetings, we talk to people who have gone through similar experiences. There are those who have already overcome their grief and have started new lives. Mommy, look, Lily says, pointing to a flower that is blooming in front of the shop. A pure white lily shines under the morning sun. How beautiful. I smile. Flowers change with the seasons, but their beauty remains constant. We too will live through new seasons in the same way. Mommy, I'm happy today too, Lily says, hugging me. Her words warm my heart. We certainly lost important things, but we have managed to protect even more valuable things. Our family ties and a future full of hope. At that moment, the wind chime rings in the shop. A new day was about to begin.